Good day, everyone. Balwinder Marwaha from the Inside Out Institute here with special guest today, Harpreet Dayal. Harpreet is a poet, a writer, and an influencer. Harpreet has a finance background, but discovered a love for writing and poetry and self-love, and we'll ask her a little bit about that. So, Harpreet, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off by your journey. Obviously, a finance background.
Yes.
You grew up in London, England, and how did this love of poetry and love of love really develop?
So I've always been a very creative child. So,
Okay.
grew up singing, dancing, like painting, like everything. I did all of those things. And then I just, followed like everyone else a more traditional path, and I, studied business psychology at university, and then a traditional career, went into banking eventually. And then when I was moving to Calgary, when I met my husband's Canadian, I met him and I was moving here. The whole fear, like it was coming up, this discomfort around change. I didn't know anyone in Canada. I've lived in England my whole life, and I was like, how do I channel this energy? How do I channel this fear? So I started writing the children's book Wilbur The Worm, and it was one of those things. I had an idea for this book and I just went with it, and I just wrote this. And I always say that I found refuge in words because it helped me deal with the fear that I was facing, like a lot of sleepless nights. Like, oh my god, what am I going to do over there? I knew I didn't want to go into banking. I thought, you know what, I'm taking this big leap, I'm taking this big step in my life. I may as well try something new, and also not let anything hold me back, you know, like just kind of go for it. But that took a lot of inner work, overcoming imposter syndrome. I didn't write poetry before. My interest was in children's books. And so when I moved here, I wrote a poem called Mendi, and I was connected to someone in my husband's family who's also a poet, and she was having a show the same year. So I arrived in June and she was having a show in December, and she said, you have to read this on stage. And I was like, okay, sure. I've never done this in England. But sure, I'll do it. So I went up on stage and I read Mendi for the first time, and it really opened up this new world for me. I started going to open mics. I started sharing more and more. I started getting invited to share poetry, and it was just like this new life, like this new experience. And I just went with it, and I didn't think too much. I just had faith and an open heart, and I just started sharing. And at the same time, I was volunteering. I started volunteering with the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, started teaching ESL to really figure out what I wanted to do when I moved here. I didn't make things easier for me. I could have just been like, I'll just apply for a job in a bank. But I made things harder for myself because I needed to explore this new life.
So
so that's where it's been.
That leads me to my next question is, making that jump, that, leap of really saying, hey, I've loved this all my life, but I didn't really follow it. The fear, was there anything that stopped you, or did you ever think, oh my God, why am I even doing this? Why don't I just apply for a job? Did a moment come where you were about to give up, or? I never, where I am now, it wasn't planned. I didn't come here with a big plan that this is what I'm going to do. I had a book. I had 6 months of going back and forth before I got my PR. I was like, I could Netflix or I could publish this book. So I just self-published it. And I failed the first time. I did everything myself. And then I went to a bookstore, like a local independent bookstore. And the bookshop owner, he said to me, this book isn't going to work. And he told me everything that was wrong with it. And I remember that day I went back to the car, I started crying. I was like, I put so much work into this, but I didn't let that stop me. So I went back to the drawing board, I did everything again, and then I ended up having this book in
chapters.
Okay.
I did book signings. I read at the Khalsa school. I read to children. It was just the most amazing experience, and I just let any opportunity that came, I just went with it.
You went with it, okay. Perfect.
Yeah. But I've always had that self-doubt. But that's kind of ingrained since childhood. Like, you know, you have to follow that traditional career, which I am. I'm actually working full-time as well.
Okay.
But there's always that pressure to do that. And when I was in banking, I felt like that creative spark that I had growing up, that carefree, kind of just creating for the sake of creating because you enjoy it, not because you want to become an overnight success or anything like that. But I was losing that. So I just like writing and then coming here and then going on stage, that all this opened up this floodgate of creativity, and I have not been able to stop.
That's awesome.
If people tell me to stop, I'm not going to stop.
Okay, that's awesome. So what you just mentioned, you know, one of the things, and the unfortunate part in our culture, it's kind of shunned upon or frowned upon to go to the creative side and pursue this. So did you face those challenges? Was there any, you know, did you ever get that, like, why don't you do
100%. So ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ secondary school to high school, last 2 years, I took drama. My dad was not happy, but I was like, well, you know, I'm just going to try it. When I was in my first year of secondary school, or high school, sorry, I was really, really shy. Like, really shy. I got the lowest grade in drama. And then when I ended up taking drama for my last year at school, I got the really high grade.
Okay.
So it just showed how much I'd grown. But my parents, they've always encouraged taking that traditional path. Ke bank ch kam kar, or you know, lawyer ban ja, and all this stuff. Yeah. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. But what I've learned over the years is that you can have the best of both worlds.
Yes.
Like I don't like being in a box. Like, this is who I am. I feel like there's no box. So I can have a job, a full-time job, but I can still be an artist. So I feel like I have 2 jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, so full-time I work as a community relations manager for a program here in Calgary.
Okay.
It's called Empower Me, and it's an energy conservation education program. So what we do is we teach newcomers and seniors about how to save energy, how to make sure that your home is more comfortable and safe, how to read your energy bill, understand it. But we deliver that in language, so like in Punjabi and you know, Farsi, Chinese, Spanish.
Oh, that's terrific.
So that's what I do. I feel like both my careers, my artistic career and my professional career, for lack of a better word, they've all worked in parallel. So I'm working with community on both levels, as an artist and as a community relations manager.
Okay, that's terrific. That's terrific. So, tell me about Wilbur the Worm. So you started this book. You know, obviously you failed the first time. And, I've actually written a book as well, and self-published, but I just published it and then I never pursued it. I just kind of said, okay, you know, I've done this now, and now what, right? So, you know, having failed and having been told this isn't going to work, what did that do to you? And then how did you overcome that fear or that failure and say, okay, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to, you know, tell us about that.
I think just growing up, I've been told to be a certain way, like by society and all that, but also, you know, being bullied at school, that always held me back.
Okay.
So I just came here with a very open mind, and I'm not sure as a newcomer to any country, I feel like you work like 100 times harder than the average person. I'm not sure if you know, you can maybe relate. Like,
well, my wife definitely, you know, coming, you know, she moved from New Delhi to Calgary, and coming from New Delhi, a very hustling, bustling place, much like London, and coming to Calgary, it feels like there's nothing going on here. Like, you know, how are you supposed to connect and do things? And and it sounds like you've been here for a while. When did you move here?
So I moved here in 2015.
Okay.
And, you know, just to touch on that, it's like when you move here, when you move to a new country, and you're building this foundation, there's so many different layers, right?
Absolutely.
Like there's finding a job, you know, making new friends, and, you know, fitting in and
figuring out what you want to do. There's so many different layers to moving to a new country.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't want anyone to hold me back, not even myself.
Okay.
You know, I have that imposter syndrome. I have that fear. I don't call myself an expert, you know, like I'm learning every day.
Okay.
But when that fear shows up, or that imposter syndrome shows up and says, why are you doing this? Like, what gives you the right to share this story?
Yeah.
Or, you know, organize this event? Why are you doing it? Like, those voices always will come up. But it's like, I have to place it over here and say, okay, you've said what you had to say.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to let you potter along.
Yes.
And I am going to just do what I was here to do.
Okay.
And figuring out your purpose, why you do what you do, is really important too. And I think the past year, actually since last year, I've been trying to figure that out. Like, why do I write? Why do I organize events? Why, like, what's driving that?
And that self-discovery never really ends. You know, learning about yourself and growing yourself never ends. It just, it's a continuation. So that brings me to the topic of love. You know, self-love. I've just recently discovered that, you know, your self-love is infinite. It never really ends, and the more you continue to discover yourself, the more you can love yourself and grow that. So let's talk about love and your journey to self-love, and really, you know, how that came along and what it means to you.
I mean, self-love is really important. Like, you see my Instagram page, I'm always posting uplifting things, writing and everything. It's not necessarily poetry, but still. Like I mentioned, I was, you know, bullied growing up. So I'll tell you a little story.
Stories are great. I love stories.
So so when I was 9, I went to India for a holiday. And I was involved in a car accident. And I have this scar on my head, and my hair was shaved from here up to here. So, like, the scar goes back up to there. I had a fractured pelvis, and I was bedridden for 2 months. And when I came back to England, the first thing I wanted to do was go to school, like, see my friends. But with that came, you look different. And I'm not sure, the generation is different now, but when I was way back, when this happened, we didn't think too much about how we look or our appearance. You know, we didn't have that much influence like we do from social media. So that wasn't my first thing, like, okay, how I look different now. But when I went to school, I remember the first day I went to school, the whole school, like everyone, like all the kids, they surrounded me, they wanted to know what happened. So one teacher has told the other teacher, and the whole school basically knows. And then there was this one girl, she was like the popular girl, and she walked up to me and she said, that's all she said. That's all it took. So that day I went home and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a problem. So I grew up being teased. I used to be called Scarface and all these like horrible names.
And I can relate to that.
I
can definitely relate to that. But
continue. So it's just that, and then that, it kind of sits with you, like it becomes like this deep wound. Is for, you know, like it just becomes this thing that holds you back. Like, you know, when you're told by other people that you're ugly, you're this, you're that, and then you have expectations from society, from parents and everything. So there's a number of things that kind of hold you back from your fullest potential. So I wanted to rediscover that when I moved here. I was like, this is the time for me to do that. I have the opportunity, I've been given this opportunity, and I'm going to take it. And self-love is hard. It's not something, it's not like a magic pill, you take it and it's like, oh, I love myself.
Right? It's absolutely not easy.
You have to work on yourself every single day. And for me, like I said, when I moved here, it's like, I'm not giving 100% to what I do, I give 200%. And that means I'm working hard. And that means when everyone's 9 to 5 finishes, even mine, my day is not over. I'm still working hard. But I have to remind myself that it's okay to not work so hard sometimes, and not be hard on yourself, and be compassionate and be kind to yourself. And so whatever I share on my Instagram is kind of like an open journal. Like, those thoughts are not just randomly put there. Like, it's something I've written to myself in my journal, and then I share it on my page. Okay. And my page has evolved now. It used to be just poetry, and I was like, no, it's going to be love notes now for people.
Okay. No, and I follow. I love it. Everything. I love your posts. Yeah, I want to ask you something relating to your posts.
Yep.
Do you have a lot of flowers?
So I've collected them over time. Okay. So the pictures, I kind of share them again and again. But yeah, whenever someone gives me some flowers, or if I'm growing flowers, or I might buy some flowers to spruce up my page. But yeah, I don't buy them every week. Okay, it's maybe like once every 6 months or something.
There's always a unique flower, or what looks like a very unique flower, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, I just take a picture
and for those of you that are watching, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll have to follow her on Instagram to see her beautiful poetry, the beautiful words, and the flowers. So,
thank you.
So this journey about loving yourself, it is a journey. It takes time. It takes a lot of work every day. Where does a person start? What do they do? How do you start loving yourself? Because the reality is we've never been taught this in school.
No.
Society doesn't teach it. Yet it's so important to an individual's success.
Yeah.
So where does a person start? How do they, for someone that's never thought of that concept or never thought, okay, well, I need to start loving myself, or I need to create a routine of where I love myself. Where do you start?
For me, it's self-reflection and building that self-awareness. Like, okay, I'm saying something and I'm not being kind to myself. Being able to step outside of yourself and being able to say, okay, you're not being kind to yourself right now. You need to get to that point.
Okay.
And to get to that point, you have to make time for yourself. We're all very busy. Parents are busy with their kids. And it's just like, how do you take time out for yourself in the day? That could be 5 minutes, that could be 15 minutes, that could be 2 hours. But you have to be intentional. Like, you have to say, you know what, I want to do something for myself, for my betterment. And in order for me to do that, I need to be intentional about the time that I carve out for myself during the week. That is just dedicated to me. And that could and that could be just, doing something that you love. It could just be sitting with yourself. It could be going for a walk. These small steps, I think, are that step towards self-love. Okay. And then for me personally, it's journaling. I was never disciplined in journaling, but it really has changed my life. Okay. Because I sit down and I write about my thoughts and whatever, like, my feelings are, what I'm feeling, and it really, I can read back and pinpoint all the places where I'm really negative, or I'm like, okay, well, this isn't kind, this isn't kind, this isn't kind. What can I do to shift my perspective?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So here's this might be a bit of a tricky question, but as a male, when men talk about love, it's always like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, this is a girl thing, yet it's just as equally important for men to do this as women.
Yeah.
And when you say to a guy or a male that, hey, have a journal, they're gonna be like, a journal? What do you mean, a journal, right? So, how do you get rid of that perspective, or that, I'm trying to find the right word here, but for men, how do you? What would you say? Like, exactly.
It's a bit girly, or
because I know and the reason why I'm saying this is that I myself, I've been working on myself, but I know there's going to be a lot of male people that are watching this, and how can we get them to start that journey of loving themselves, because it's equally as important. And if they're in a relationship, they're half of the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So, or half of the family, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's education. I think it's educating people on the benefits of it. A helpful way maybe is to send articles to friends and be like, you should read this and see what the benefits are of, just to convince them that this is something that is important. And if you are friends with someone who's kind of negative or just very apprehensive about journaling, they will see a shift in you over time as well. Like, if you are very open and you're telling them, this is what I do. Like, my husband, he journals every day, and he reflects on his day or what he wants out of his day. And being open. So men who are journaling, like you are working on yourself, need to be more open and be like, hey friend, this is what I've been doing, and they're gonna see that growth in you and be like, okay, maybe I should do that too.
Yes.
So it's like leading by example, essentially. But that and education, like educating them on what the benefits are.
What the benefits are. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to start. Now I want to talk about, you have a program, an 8-week program.
Yeah.
It's, remind me what it's called again?
A Journey to Your Heart.
A Journey to Your Heart.
Yeah.
So tell us about this 8-week program. How did it come about? I know you started it in 2017, so a few years ago.
Well, the program I started when COVID went crazy on all of us.
Okay.
So Love Notes is what I started in 2017.
Okay.
So I'll start with Love Notes because it came before. So Love Notes is an event that I host once a year.
Okay.
And I started off in a coffee shop in 2017, and it was really inspired by or motivated by there's a lot of hatred, a lot of racism. It was around the time of Brexit, like a lot of go home comments and all of that stuff. And I was like, I want to do something in my small way as an artist to spread a bit more love and essentially send out love notes to the universe.
Okay.
As cheesy as that sounds. Anyway, so I was I was spending a lot of time in this cafe, spending a lot of time writing there, and I was, became acquainted with the owner, and I said, I have this idea, I want to do this in your cafe. Is that okay with you? And he was like, yeah, I love the idea. Here's a date and time. And so I just did it within 2 weeks. And that's another example of not being afraid of just asking, just winging it. It's kind of what I've done for the past 5 years. I have an idea, I want to do that. Okay. So I just asked him, and I did the show. And then that same night, my husband and I were driving home, and we drove by Arts Commons, and I turned to him and I said to him, my next show is going to be in Arts Commons. I didn't say I want it to be in Arts Commons. I said it's going to be.
Awesome.
And then the following year, long story short, I ended up doing the show at Arts Commons, and I've been doing it every. Thank you.
Good for you.
Yeah, so it's just like I want to do it. I will do it.
Yeah, and manifestation, right?
Yeah,
it's once you've manifested it to the universe, and you've, like you say, putting that love out into the universe. The universe listens. It's all energy. It's vibrations.
Exactly.
And when you manifest something, the universe will make its way and make sure you can achieve what you want to.
Exactly. So I've been doing it since 2017. I've had 2 shows at Arts Commons.
Okay.
I was meant to have one this year, but it was cancelled because of COVID. So it'll happen next year in March.
Okay.
And essentially what I do is I play artistic matchmaker. I bring artists together. I'm like, you and you, I think you're going to be great together. So why don't you go and create something that is a celebration of love? And that could be, Indian classical musician with a poet, or it could be contemporary dance with violin, or whatever. Like I just bring all these different cultures and disciplines together. And that in itself is demonstrating that we are all different. We can celebrate that, but we can also celebrate that there's one thing that connects us all, and that's love.
Absolutely.
So that's what I started in 2017. The guide was something, and I'm not sure if you felt the same, but when COVID happened, was still happening, but the social distancing measures were put in place, I really felt this urge to do something to help people in my own way. And so I decided to put a guide together. It's an 8-week guide, and it's when you purchase the guide, you receive each exercise once a week for 8 weeks. And in each exercise, it's a reflection exercise. It could be gratitude, it could be forgiveness, it could be kind of being okay with being alone, because a lot of people are spending time alone at this time. Well, not so now, but more so like earlier on in the year.
Yes.
So that's what really encouraged me to launch that guide. And I was anxious, and I had the imposter syndrome again, because this was like something I was offering that isn't a book, and it's essentially a guide, a program. And again, it was just me taking a leap and being like, okay, well, now is the time to do it. Just do it, and hopefully people will, enjoy it and find some use out of it, find it of value, and so
well, I can attest to your guide, because I know someone very dear to me who's done your guide, and it's really helped her. it's a stepping stone, and just that one small stepping stone can create a huge shift. You know, you don't get to the top of the stairs or the top of the ladder by getting straight to the top. You got to take each step at a time. So that really helped, and I think for anyone that wants to start this journey, I believe your 8-week program is a terrific way to start. You know, and if anyone's even afraid to take that step, they're baby steps. You know, if you had to estimate each week, each journey, if you want to call it, how long does it take? How much time do you spend?
It can take 10 minutes, it can take half an hour. It really depends on how much time you want to spend. And again, it's that being intentional. I'm carving out this time to sit down with myself to do this. And it's, again, like you said, it's the small step. This is a small step to kind of becoming more aware of who you are. And in each of the guide, I share a little bit of a story about myself, which again was something it was outside of my comfort zone. I hope that men and women buy the guide.
Okay, awesome. So where can people find this guide?
So it's on my website. So it's harpreetmdayal.com.
Okay, so if anyone didn't get that, harpreetmdayal.com. Definitely look into it, check it out. It is it's absolutely amazing. And as Harpreet said, it's just small shifts. Give yourself that 10 minutes or half an hour every week. Start there and then build yourself up and commit to that time for yourself, that love for yourself, and visit Harpreet's website at harpreetmdayal.com. Visit her on Instagram, and definitely start the journey to loving yourself. Thank you very, very much, Harpreet, for joining us today. I've learned some great things just by having you here, so that's great, and I hope our listeners and viewers get the same. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward to attending your show next March.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, thanks.